Hi, my name is Father Jim Forson, and I'd like to share with you some reflections on the gospel of this Sunday, Palm Sunday. We begin Holy Week, and the gospel we hear on Palm Sunday is one that will echo its way throughout all of Holy Week. It's a story that we know so well, beginning with Jesus at his Last Supper, followed by the agony in the garden. We know the story of the soldiers coming to arrest him and the apostles running away in fear, and he being falsely accused and then brought before Pilate. We're so familiar with the story of him being scourged at the pillar and crowned with thorns and then made to carry that cross through the streets of Jerusalem and eventually to be crucified and to die. We have heard that story so many times. We've heard that story for decades. And yet, tell me, why is it that we never tire of hearing it? Why is it that we don't just simply say, yeah, been there, done that, I've heard that story a million times? We don't. That story, year after year, draws us in. Why? Because I think that when we hear the story of Christ's passion and death, what we are really hearing is our story. In his life, we are seeing our lives, and that story resonates with us. In that story of Jesus Christ, we see the apostles, and the apostles remind us of ourselves. The apostles who wanted to be brave and wanted to be with Christ, but at the same time were held back by their own fearfulness. They ran away when danger approached, and held back by their own treachery, that of Judas Iscariot, and held back by their own self-involvement. And men who wanted to be true apostles, but their own humanity got in the way. In that story, we can see our story, as we can even in the story of the soldiers who are just doing their job. They're just there to arrest Jesus or to take him to the cross, and they weren't there to do anything. And besides, they couldn't stop human suffering. And sometimes we can look at the suffering of humanity and, like the soldiers, stand by and watch it happen. What can we do to stop that? We can see our lives in their stories, as we can in the story of Mary, the mother of Christ, who could do nothing to stop her son from suffering terribly. Just as all of you parents have from time to time watched your children suffer, and there is not a thing you can do to stop it other than be with them and weep. As did the weeping women of Jerusalem. We see ourselves in their tears because they are heartbroken to see what is happening to someone whom they cared for, someone whom they loved. In all of those stories, we see our story. In all of those lives, we can see our life. And we can see it also, our life, in the passion of Christ. In his sufferings, we see our own. Because there's been times in our lives when we have been falsely accused. Times when we've been physically hurt by the cruelty of another. There are times when we felt abandoned or betrayed. When we read, when we hear of his sufferings, we can see our own. And also in this story of Jesus Christ, we see heroism. Jesus was heroic, being falsely accused, being hurt, being tortured. He never lashed back. He never sought vengeance, never called out an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. He didn't do any of that at all. There were some times when he had to suffer silently, and so have we at times in our life have had to suffer silently and not seek vengeance. The heroism of Jesus also resonates within our own lives, as does that of Veronica, who did something unthinkable because a woman would never take off her veil, and she did, and pushed her way through the crowd to wipe Jesus' face to offer him just a little moment of respite from his sufferings. All of us have done that. Just one small act of human kindness to lift the suffering of another. In Veronica, we see ourselves. And we can even see ourselves in the soldier who, when he heard Jesus say, "I thirst," offered him something to drink. And in the other soldier, when he saw the death of Christ, knew how to call a spade and speak the truth and say, "This man surely was the Son of God," regardless of the thoughts of those around him who would hear those words. There are times when we have spoken the truth, no matter what. In that heroism in the story of Jesus Christ, we also find a resonation within our own hearts. We never tire of this story, because this story is our story. When God entered the life of humanity through Jesus Christ, he entered deeply into the story of humanity and took upon himself all of the passion that goes with that story and all of the death that goes with that story. But by entering into the story of humanity, he brought something that humanity never dreamed of: resurrection, new life. We never tire of this story, because this story points beyond itself to something incredible, something we never would have dreamed of. This story points to hope. This story points to new life. We never tire of this story because we never tire about dreaming of new life. As we enter into Holy Week, may our prayer as we live this story of Christ be that of new life.